Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi won't be attending President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration next week. A spokesperson for Pelosi didn't give a reason why, but it is a big change from 2017, when Pelosi did appear at Trump's first inauguration. And today, Governor Ron DeSantis announced Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody will fill Marco Rubio's Senate seat.
But I'm ready to show up and fight for this nation and fight for President Trump to deliver the American First agenda on day one.
Joining me now to discuss more is the Hill's White House correspondent, Alex Gangitano. So, Alex, first let's talk about Pelosi. What do you make of this move by her?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you mentioned, she was at the first Trump inauguration, but of course the two have had a very rocky relationship over the years. I mean, the most memorable was when she ripped up the President Trump's State of the Union address, when Trump appeared to not shake her hand when he went up to give his speech. And since then, Pelosi has not ever backed down from rebuking something from the president-elect. And of course, she's no longer speaker, but she still is a sitting member of the House California delegation, and will have to figure out ways to work with the Trump team. But I think this is just her sending a signal, as I also think it's with former First Lady, Michelle Obama not going to. These are just signals that they're not going to, kiss the ring, I guess, so to speak. And if they're not happy with Trump, they're not happy with his election, then they're not going to celebrate it.
Yeah, it feels like so much has changed from 2017. But now I want to ask about Florida. What do we know about Ashley Moody, and is her appointment a surprise to you? Because it felt like for so long we were hearing about maybe someone from Trump's innermost circle being chosen for this.
Yeah, over the last few days, she seemed to emerge as the front runner here, and I think a lot of it is interesting connections with the Trump team. She is considered an ally at this point. She also has the position that Pam Bondi used to have in Florida, Attorney General, and of course, Pam Bondi is now Trump's selection for the Department of Justice, and she's been up on Capitol Hill facing hearings. So this is all, Trump's wider circle down in Florida now that he's been able to create over the years. Interestingly, though, Moody has not always been a Trump ally. Back in 2009, she actually was investigating him for fraud in a real estate deal in Florida. But since then, she has said that I am supportive of him and has 100% been behind him since really his 2016 election. So this is someone he just considers an ally, and it also speaks to the relationship now with Governor Ron DeSantis, that things are better. They are mending their relationship. DeSantis put someone in place who Trump is happy with, and that's all part of them also strengthening this alliance they have.
Yeah, I'm sure Ron DeSantis felt like he had to be very careful
That's right.
with who he chose, given their relationship now. But speaking of Pam Bondi and some of these cabinet secretary hearings, I do want to ask about Scott Besson, who is nominated for Treasury Secretary. During his hearing today, he was asked about Trump's tariff plans, which have been one of the topics du jour. Did he give any insight into what type of strategy the Trump team has in place in terms of tariffs?
Yeah, one thing that was interesting when he was talking about tariffs is he brought up the idea of maybe putting tariffs on carbon emissions. That's something that's a newer idea that if he's in favor of. We'll see if that broadens the amount of tariffs that we're going to see out of the Trump team. But in terms of an actual plan, I think he's aligned with whatever Trump wants for tariffs. We know that Trump ran on this idea of imposing high tariffs on Canada, on Mexico, on goods from China as well. And he chose Besson in part because that was somebody who wasn't going to fight him on his plans for tariffs and is going to support him as he implements those. So I think that he is somebody who will be approved in the Senate. He is a candidate that I think we might even see some Democrats get behind. He definitely is someone who is just aligned with Trump on some of those policies.
Right. I want to ask you about John Federman now, Pennsylvania Senator John Federman. He seems to be trying to work on a relationship with President Trump. He was recently in Mar-a-Lago. Trump came out saying nice things about him after that meeting. And Federman has also sort of become a critic of his own party in certain ways, like on messaging, thinking here about immigration, the Lake and Riley Act, which Senate Democrats want to amend before they pass. So I'm wondering what you make of his sort of shift here. Do you think he's really just trying to find, bipartisanship, or do you think there's something more to this?
Yeah, the way I look at it is, Fetterman is a senator from Pennsylvania, which is such a critical swing state. It's somewhere that they are all types of political ideologies in that state. And if he wants to be representative of the people of the whole state, he has to work with Trump. I mean, it's a pivotal state for jobs and for certain industries. These are all things that what Trump does in the White House impacts the people that he's representing. So I think he knows that he can't just be, one of the Democrats that is a thorn in the president's side for the next 4 years. He's going to have to figure out a way to get the president's ear in order to get a seat at the table to represent his constituents. So he went down to Mar-a-Lago, as you mentioned. Trump had really positive things to say after that. I think he's kind of just playing the game so that the next time there is a fight that comes up or something that Fetterman wants the president's ear on, he can actually get it, because he, is not treating this as a Democrat versus Republican issue, but just trying to treat this as, this is the president-elect, I better get to know him so we can work together.
Playing the long game here.
That's right.
Well, we know President Biden recently gave his farewell speech, and his speech was sort of a mix of hope and fear. On the fear side, he talked a lot about warning of the tech industrial complex and oligarchy in America. What specifically was he warning about?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was not the typical President Biden. It is typically very optimistic, has a very shiny view of America, but he has been warning about a threat to democracy from President-elect Trump throughout this campaign, and now throughout after the campaign. We're hearing him keep up that tone of, I warned the American public about him, and now I'm going to continue with these warnings as someone in a position of power. And so basically he was saying with the threat of an oligarchy is we're seeing a growing small number of influence when it comes to power and money here in the U.S. I mean, he never mentioned Trump or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any of those people who are now part of Trump's circle directly, but it was in response, one would think, to what we're seeing, billionaires joining the Trump cabinet and getting this extreme power that they didn't have before when it comes to the government and policies. So I think Biden was basically warning against letting this continue to happen, and also wanted, I think, Americans to be aware that this is something that could pose some risks in the future. We also heard him warning about misinformation, about not respecting a free press. These are all things that have been important topics to this president, and he, brought it up, felt the need to bring that up in his farewell address and not just make it a rosy, I'm optimistic about America's future, but more also he called on Americans to stand guard and kind of be the keepers while he leaves on Monday.
Yeah, probably very different than how he imagined that farewell speech might have gone at the beginning of his term. But in that same message, he also credited his administration for the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, which would be a major win for the Biden administration if it goes through. And Antony Blinken spoke about this just earlier today. Listen to what he said.
Over 15 months of devastating conflict between Israel and Hamas, we've worked to broker a deal. We now have that, and we expect implementation of the agreement to begin on Sunday.
So what is the latest update here on this deal? Because we know that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there's a last-minute crisis and that Hamas is sort of getting in the way of this deal. So what exactly is going on at the moment?
Yeah, so of course yesterday there was a lot of excitement from both teams, the Trump team and the Biden team, about this deal. As of now, it does still seem like the two Americans that are set to be released on Sunday, that has not been delayed, and then that we'll have more releases in the future, but in future days. But it does seem like these warnings from Netanyahu, the administration is taking into consideration, but are still staying positive that the deal will go as planned. Again, there are these Americans coming out on Sunday as part of this first phase, which allows for older hostages and wounded hostages to come out. So that's, of course, the day before the last day of the Biden term. And so this, optically, I think the Biden team is really pushing for at least a couple hostages to be released. It marks the beginning of the phases of this deal, and the president can continue to claim credit for this, as we also know that President Trump team is claiming credit for this, while others are saying we worked hand in hand. You know, this is all, we know that there was a team effort, but I think the Biden team really wants to be considered that they did the most amount of work here.
Yeah, it seems like it was very important to them to make sure that they get the credit for this deal going through. Alex Gangitano, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Winds are finally easing in the Los Angeles area after nearly 2 weeks of raging wildfires. As of Thursday afternoon, the Eaton fire stands at 55% contained, while the Palisades fire is just 22% contained. More than 12,000 structures have been destroyed, at least 25 people have been killed, and 31 people are still missing. Residents and officials are now raising concerns over potential mud and landslides in the wake of the fires, as well as price gouging amid a shortage of resources. California Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order Thursday to help victims with temporary housing needs in the wake of the fire. The order suspends rules that prevent RVs as well as mobile and manufactured homes from being used outside of mobile home parks. In the meantime, law enforcement are boosting security in the affected areas as they've seen an increase in burglaries and looting. Jamie Chambers with Nexstar Nation's KTLA in Los Angeles has an inside look at how they're cracking down on crime.
As generational losses hang in the air as toxic ash and smoke, the few worldly possessions that have survived the Eaton fire have become the prized targets of opportunistic thieves and looters. Pushing back on those crimes is Captain Jabari Williams and his team of deputies from the Altadena Sheriff's Department, with an impressive arrest rate so far.
Over 33. And it includes looters, people that we've caught trying to burglarize houses.
With the help of the National Guard, the CHP, and the sheriff's constant patrolling, criminals are struggling more and more in their efforts.
Seeing the devastation is heartbreaking, but we know how strong our community is.
This is a two-pronged security system from the LA County Sheriffs in this looter suppression. You've got the black and whites that are those visible deterrents, and then you've got these blacked out cars, and they're the ones that target the specific looters while they're in the act.
Yeah, try not to show my emotions to my family, but it's hard.
Martha Jimenez's house was one of the very few still standing. She says since day one, there have been looters attacking her neighbor's remaining treasures.
It just angers me that, you know, if that family has something that stood, that survived, and that they're able to take home, that's the last thing they have, and someone comes and just takes it from them.
Now, a very small handful of evacuation orders have been lifted.
Having our community back, they're an extra pair of eyes for us as well. So they do help in looter prevention, they help in recognizing people who shouldn't be in our community.
After the calls come in, deputies say it doesn't take much to identify a criminal.
Having a simple conversation with a lot of the people, we can get some red flags as to maybe they should or they should not be in the area.
In a recent arrest, an Emmy Award was recovered from a looter, and Martha says at this point, when a family can recover anything from this fire, it makes a world of difference.
They knew that their house wasn't there no more, but they were going to go see what survived. When they came back down, they showed me a shovel, their son's favorite toy. That survived, and they took it home to him.
That was Jamie Chambers reporting from Altadena. The LA County Sheriff's Department says crime in the area has decreased dramatically since they began patrolling the Eaton fire area, and they'll continue their efforts as the recovery efforts continue. Ivanka Trump says she's taking a step back from politics. The soon-to-be first daughter and a key advisor in her father's first term made that announcement on a podcast earlier this week, saying she hated politics and called it a, quote, very dark, negative business. Ivanka says she doesn't plan to be involved in her father's second administration, saying she doesn't want her kids to bear the price of living in the political world, but says she hopes to find ways to support her father as he gets ready for his second term. Her husband, Jared Kushner, also plans on not taking an official role, but will reportedly remain involved behind the scenes as an unofficial advisor. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Bianca Facchinei. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.